Welcome to Fall Rise Give, a space where we invite you to dig into the real cause of your suffering, looking at opportunities for growth with a change in your beliefs, thoughts, and actions so you can be your true self and be inspired. Join us as we explore life's ups and downs and navigate the twists and turns, sharing stories of resilience, hope, and the transformative power of giving back. Whether you're looking for a change, in recovery, or simply seeking inspiration, this podcast is your go-to for candid conversations, raw emotions, and a whole lot of heart. Tune in and discover how to fall, rise, and give back on life's extraordinary journey. Welcome to another edition of Fall Rise Give, turn struggles into opportunities by being your true self and help others. I'm Bartender Bob, that is Kumar, and a lot of fun things happened this week for me, Kumar. Went on a really fun kayak ride, went on a few motorcycle rides, and had a lot of fun exploring the driftless region. I saw on Facebook that you had quite the adventure. You actually were in a self-driving car.
Yeah, Bob. My wife drove my daughter from Seattle down to San Francisco. And my daughter is moving there, and we talked about her a lot, manifest her and all that stuff. She's quite the special person, and she's living in a pretty cool part of San Francisco, and there's a lot of self-driving cars there now. They're being tested without drivers. They were being tested with a driver just hanging out waiting before, but now they're totally driverless, and they're all over. It's like an Uber or a Lyft without a driver. So you go on the app, you tell them which location, and then it finds you, instead of an Uber, a Waymo. It's called a Waymo. And it's owned by Google. And there's tons of them driving around in San Francisco waiting to hail a ride for you. And my wife really wanted to do it. I wanted to do it. And a lot of people are scared about it. But, man, we were 100% comfortable. It was a Jaguar, is the actual physical car, with all these cameras and all these amazing things on it. It didn't look anything out of the ordinary, though. It didn't look like one of those supercars with all these cameras sticking out. It's just a little bit of a camera at the top, a little bit on the sides, and pretty fancy ride. It had a very calming music in it. It picked us up, told us what to expect. It said seatbelts still matter, and it got us to our location. It was super cautious, a little bit slower than I would expect a cab driver to be, obviously, or an Uber driver to be. We told it to go to one burger joint called Super Duper, and then my wife had it wrong, so my daughter changed the location, which in Uber you can't do easily. We changed the location. It turned itself around right near downtown, and it got back to the new location. It was very cautious. It got stuck in the left lane behind a lot of people taking left turns, but it just was patient as heck. And it got us there a little bit slower than normal. But, man, what a ride. It was just such a calming, very safe feeling. I did not worry at all about security or safety. I felt totally comfortable. I trusted the car. The car did its thing. It had this amazing music and a digital dashboard and all that. It was like a Tesla. I don't know if you've been inside a Tesla where you could see all around the car. But it actually had people moving across. The cameras could tell if somebody was in the sidewalk to the left, walking parallel to the car. It could tell if there's people waiting to cross over. It would wait for people to cross the crosswalk. It was like a digital experience of all these things happening in like a video game, but it was real life, and all these people would be like little heat maps moving around, but they weren't heat maps.
I'm wondering, did you tip?
No, absolutely no tip. And I'm so sick of tipping. I mean, the whole country is sick of tipping. Now you got to go to every restaurant, you order fast food. Now I got to tip the fast food person. What? This is craziness. Getting out of hand. But I still tip. I just feel for them. I don't like doing it. I don't tip more than 10% to a fast food place, but to a restaurant, bar, I do 20%. That's just kind of my deal.
You know, I've always been a pretty decent tipper, at least 20%, but being a bartender now, I tend to tip a little bit higher than I used to tip, just because I know the struggles that wait staff goes through nowadays. Speaking of struggles, one of my family members has had a lot of struggles, a life full of struggles, as a matter of fact, and he and my mom listen to the show all the time, My stepdad Dave has a story that is very interesting, and I've heard it a lot of times. And I want to have you, Kumar, lead this interview because I want it to be about Dave and Dave's story. Dave is a great man. I love the guy. He's a great stepfather and a wonderful husband to my mom and a great addition to my family. Kumar, if you take over the interview and just kind of go from here.
Yeah, welcome to the show, Dave. Anything you want to get started with?
Oh yeah, I'll tell you about Lisa, my daughter. She's been an inspiration in my life, and she just has done tremendous things for me. And when I explain who she is and what she is, you're going to say, "Well, how did she do that?" Well, she was born multiply handicapped, and she could not talk, she could not walk. She was totally dependent on her mother and myself, and that's just the way it was. And she was given a very complex diagnosis when she was born, which turned out to be kind of wrong. And everybody decided that perhaps the diagnosis would be more clear, would be cerebral palsy. Now, cerebral palsy, you usually would think of an individual who has maybe flailing arms, kind of spastic, and those kinds of things, and essentially having a kind of a normal type of personality. But at least it wasn't that. She was known as being hypotonic, and she didn't have much strength in her arms or anything, and she had somewhat of a flat affect. But she enjoyed life, and you could tell that she did. Um, when someone is born to you that has multiple handicaps and difficulties, the first thing that you think about is, well, why did that happen? What's going on? And was it anything that we did as parents? Just what's happening? That feeling was essentially a feeling of despair throughout my whole life, and it made me feel real guilty about uh, what it was that was the problem. And it was one day that I was sitting down with her, and I think it was before she was 10 years old. She was just a delightful young lady. She looked up at me, and I was just in my mind was always this guilt thing, this why, this kind of that. And I took a look at her and I was kind of holding her hand a little bit, and she didn't really put eyes on you very much, but she did that time. She looked right at me, and she looked at me for a long time. And all of a sudden, the revelation came to me, and Lisa was like she was talking. She said, why are you feeling this way? What's your problem?" And I was just thinking to myself, my God, she's almost talking to me. And my problem was that I was wondering why. Why is this happening? Lisa just kind of looked at me, and all of a sudden, the thought came to my mind from her that said, "Why is not the question. The question is, what are you going to do about it?" Now that was an epiphany for me, and that became something that I can get my teeth into. And quite frankly, that what can I do about it has become pretty much how I think about things all through life, and it has greatly helped me. So my fall was my believing that I just was my fault, my guilt, all these kinds of things. Lisa gave me the rise. She told me, do something about it. And it was really mind blowing. And this is I still can't get over that. And she's given me a great outlook towards life, and I try to emulate that in my life uh, and go through it like that. If there's any questions, go ahead and ask. I might have forgotten some things about it, but generally that's what I'm thinking about. That's what I thought.
Wow, that's quite amazing.
It is.
I was just reading a book yesterday, and I picked it up a couple days ago. It's not something that I'm proud of or was going to talk about. I was just buying it to see what this guy's going to say, and I'm going to shut it down. And then I'm fascinated by this book. It's called the 10X Rule. And the chapter that I was reading yesterday was about victim mentality. And the victim mentality basically says, why did this happen to me? Why did all this stuff happen? And now the way to turn that around is what Lisa told you is like, what are you going to do about it? That's the
Yeah.
ownership mentality. That's the player. That's the active part about like, what are you going to do in life? That's awesome, Dave. And so you've used this mindset throughout all your life. When was this happened? And how did that affect you? throughout? Like, give me a scenario of that helped you in some other areas, or how long ago was that this happened?
Well, Lisa's about 10 years old. It's probably in her late 70s, something like that. Yeah, she's just a couple of months younger than you are.
So that changed your life dramatically and how you handled every situation, not just one or two.
Yeah, you can apply it to everything.
Great. Now, you have been hearing the podcast because of Bob, and he was telling me that you got excited about this podcast and the topic that we're discussing. Tell us
Mhm.
a little bit more about why you wanted to come and talk. You wanted to just share the Lisa story or that particular thing, or was there anything else you wanted to share as well?
Well, there's one thing, I'm a physical therapist, and what you do is you help people to get well. And there's a lot of definitions behind that. And usually the people that you want to help are stuck with a want. They want this, they want that, they want to get better, they want. What they fail to realize a lot of times is the need. What do they need? And once you define what they need, then you can better implement what you really want. So that makes a big difference, and that's how I kind of approached my outlook towards the patients that I dealt with, because that it really helped me to kind of need or to understand what it is that I'm really dealing with, and I had to pass that along to my patients to have them understand what they really needed. And once they could realize what they really needed, it was a matter of almost talking the patient into getting better. It was really quite extraordinary. And that have helped me throughout my whole career, and more in my career, because towards the end of my career, I was dealing with home care. And that's the ideal situation, because one of the needs that the patient has that they don't realize is the need to be back in a place that's familiar to them, a
Yeah.
place that they uh, feel good about themselves. Once they're in that position, it's really easy to treat somebody because they're in a place that they want to be, and they want to be as whole as they can be. So that describes their need. Their need is to be whole, and their wants are to do the best that they can. So you wind up treating not the deficiencies or the weaknesses that the patient have, but you treat the strengths that the patient has so they can get around their weaknesses. And that essentially is what it was. And Lisa just reinforced all those kinds of things. In the back of your mind, you kind of think about those things, but you don't put them to practice because they're nebulous. They're not a thing that you think about. But Lisa gave me that thing that said, "Here, this is it." And it really was a quite an effect on me.
That's great. That's amazing. What a great way to live life. My team and I at work did a test, a psychological test last year around Christmas time. We did it as part, kind of like a party theme that we were going to do. We were going to do a social event, but before that, we want to kind of do a team building exercise, and it would all focus on strengths. And forgot the name of the company that we did it with, but it focused on your top 5 strengths, and it said that you should build on your strengths. And I kind of dug in. I'm like, what about your weaknesses? And the test and the company doesn't do weaknesses. It just says these are your strengths and this is what you should focus on. These are the things that describe who you are, and let others know what your strengths are so they can work through with them. So you're in the right role for your right strengths and things like that. And that's kind of what you're talking about a little bit.
That's exactly what I'm talking about.
So Lisa was a huge angel to you in your life. That's what I gather from
Oh,
all of
an angel doesn't even begin to describe it. She was the spark. She was the person who best defined who you could be.
it. Who you ended up being, not just who anybody else could be, but that's why we're talking about her, because she was an angel and super angel in a way.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit more about some of the struggles you've had and how that mentality really came through. I think you talked about with your patients and working with them and working on the strengths. But are there any other struggles that you've had in your life that were like pivotal points?
Gosh, yeah, there are other struggles that are in my life, and when I think about those kinds of things, it kind of makes me sad, but I kind of look at that. Now, my wife, I was married for 28 years before I met Bob's mom, and my wife died of cancer when she was 51 years old, just a little bit younger than you guys. and that was a kind of a tough thing too. But I tried to use what Lisa had taught me about how I should think about this thing instead of grieving all the time and just letting that at that point of grief overtake my life. I let it kind of be something that could teach me what to do and how to work with it. And it was a tremendous help in how I got through all of that. And so that's a point of help as well. So Lisa just gave me, I can't describe what she gave me and how good it made me feel and how good it made my life. And it still does. Uh, so if that's a prime example right there. One of the things that Lisa had taught me, when you think about all these kinds of things, there's two words that really open up the world. It opens up the world to me, and I think it can open up the world for a lot of people. The two words are pay attention. If you pay attention, all that information coming in can be directed towards something positive. If you don't pay attention, you don't have those directions.
I totally agree. And so paying attention to the message that you were getting from Lisa, even though you couldn't hear her talk, the message was pretty clear, wasn't it?
Yeah, do something.
Do something. We talked about the Hindu chakras, and now the chakras are pretty popular. There's all these best-selling books on that chakras and energy system. They don't even talk about them being Hindu anymore. The chakra system is fascinating to me because it's about your body and knowing what you are.
Yeah,
And the seven different energy centers, the heart being in the center, is the fourth chakra that opens up your heart. And obviously Lisa opened up your heart for you, but I think what she did for you was actually open up and got you to start thinking about your intuition and your higher power
yeah,
and really connect with her based on the intuition. Like, and you said the thing that can really open up for people is listening to your intuition. And really, that's really what paying attention is all about. We can pay attention and listen to somebody, but really what's happening in the moment, that comes from a deep insight, that really paying attention, listening with your heart, mind, and soul, right?
yeah. That's exactly right. When I was thinking about this last night and about how much it interacts and with the chakra that you talked about, it's all connected somehow.
Totally. And we're not healing experts and we're not, gurus and by any means. We just take principles and we've talked about them in the past. But the sixth chakra is all about connecting with your opening your mind's eye, the intuition, and really looking at it. Bob and I were talking about something last night, and he's like, I was just thinking the same exact thing. And we're thinking the same thing at the same time, and we're 1,500 miles apart physically. You're in Wisconsin, I'm in Seattle most of the time. And it's amazing how energies work and how intuition and the ether and all of this stuff. And we've talked about Einstein's quote, we're all energy and we're all vibrations. And so they've actually done tests on this. There are schools, and I was watching a documentary on a Netflix version of a new age channel called Gaia. Gaia is like a Netflix of new agey stuff with science and physics and yoga and meditation and all of this stuff. They got all sorts of shows on it. And what they did is that one of the documentaries I was watching was they would have people in Russia in their different schools, and they would plant people or talk to people about this discussions that were happening in California. And they would do these games over Zoom or whatever, and they would test them. And they were thinking the exact same thing, and they were playing with cards in Russia or Eastern Europe, and they were able to guess the right cards in California. It was quite amazing. This ESP is the word that comes to mind, extrasensory perception. And I think we're all interconnected to a higher power. Don't want to bring too much spirituality into this particular conversation, but we're all interconnected, and spirituality is a big part of it. But I think it's also a physics thing. We're all matter that's connected through. I mean, we don't see wavelengths of electricity from my phone to whatever the cell tower there is, right? And here we are. I'm on a wireless phone in Ashland, Oregon, and Dave's in Minnesota and you're in Wisconsin, and we're able to communicate. I mean, there's physical electronic currents that are taking us there. These currents can also be physically tapped into if we're connected and paying attention through our ESP, which I believe we all have to a certain degree.
It's kind of what I've been talking about. She has defined what it is that all people, I'm going to say all people should be doing, and it's less of being introspective and being projective with what talents that you do have. It's all kind of about that. It's not about you. It's about how you interact with everybody else. I guess that would be pretty much it. That's pretty broad, but that defines it pretty well, I think.
Dave, circling back to Kumar's story about self-driving cars, do you think you would ever go in one?
Would I? I'll tell you, you know me in electronics. If I get around electronics, it's not going to work. You know that. You know that. Your brother says the same thing. He says, "Oh, God, what now? What's going on?" So when I trust a non-driving car, I'll let you figure out what. Honestly, if it's really sound and everything, yeah, I guess I do that. Man, I'll trust a circus ride or something like a tilt-a-whirl or a roller coaster or any of those things. I'll go on those. I mean, and that's kind of the same thing. Only it's not electronic, just more mechanical. But yeah, I guess I would, but it'd be a lot of trepidation in my mind. It just happens to me. It's one of those wavelengths that affects electronics. So I got it.
It's amazing that you're saying that, Dave. So back in the early 2000s, I was a vegetarian, and I was meditating a lot, like an hour to 2 hours a day, like I am now, but I'm not a vegetarian now. All the cell phones around me were breaking all the time. I had these Blackberries, and I had a friend that worked at AT&T, was an executive, so he was constantly sending me new phones. And as Einstein talks about it, we are vibrational beings. We are electrical beings. We check our heart rate through an EKG machine. So we do affect electronics. There's no doubt about it. That's totally how it works. So electronics do make a difference. That's how we check our heart rate. To me, it's fascinating that electronics break around you and you are kicking at a very high level. So my last question to you, Dave, is you lived an amazing life based on what I can tell, based on your experience with Lisa and with Bob. You like our podcast, which is pretty cool.
And don't forget Bob's mother.
And that's great to hear for Bob and for myself, but more for Bob because that's his mother. You lived a very purposeful life, helping others.
Yes.
I mean, we talked about how Lisa helped you come to it, but would you say you lived a purposeful life?
Yes, absolutely. I think about her a lot and what she's done for me. And then I marvel at the fact that she couldn't talk. I mean, but she told me. It was amazing.
Yeah, total blessing and total grateful for you, Dave. Obviously, you're the same wavelength as we are. I'm glad you enjoy the podcast. And I think it's every family that I've known with particular handicaps have been just an angelic family because the gifts that person gives their whole family, not just themselves and the community. So what a great blessing. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Fall Rise Give, where we explore stories of resilience, growth, and giving back. If you enjoyed today's episode, please visit our website at www.fallrisegive.com. Also consider subscribing to our podcast on your favorite platform and leaving us a review. Your feedback helps us to continue to bring you inspiring stories. Stay tuned for our next episode, and remember, every fall is a chance to rise, and every rise is an opportunity to give. Until next time, keep falling, rising, and giving. This is Fall Rise Give, produced by podcastforhire.com. Thank you for listening.